The Michelin name is synonymous with quality around the world, yet many who appreciate the performance of numerous Michelin products are unaware that the company's first tire product was a bicycle tire in 1891, when the Michelin brothers patented the first detachable bicycle bead tire. To this day, Michelin continues to innovate and produce world-class products for road bicycles, mountain bikes, and specifically designed products for e-mountain bikes, like the Michelin E-Wild tire. It's the tire of choice for my team, the Impact Results EMTB team that's competing in the 2021 EMTB GNCC National Championship. This partnership will enable the team and its riders to showcase the performance, versatility, and durability of the Michelin E-Wild tires during our efforts to defend and pursue even more championships. Also for 2021, Michelin is introducing many exciting new products like the Michelin Force AM2 tire and the Michelin Wild AM2 tire designed for a variety of mountain bike terrains, as well as, this one I'm excited about, the Michelin Pilot SX and the Michelin Pilot SX Slick tire specifically for world-class level BMX racers like myself. Follow at Michelin Bicycle on Instagram or learn more about their extensive range of bicycle products by checking out their website or obviously engaging with them on social. Again, it's at Michelin Bicycle on Instagram. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. I want to talk about our friends at Just Live CBD. Support for RacerX and this podcast is brought to you by Just Live CBD. They're a trusted source for high-quality wellness CBD products created by athletes just for you. Fun fact, Travis Pastrana, ever heard of him? He may or may not know a few things about being injured, recovery, dealing with nagging pains, nagging injuries. Well, Travis is actually one of the founders of Just Live CBD, so that's pretty neat. Travis and everybody at Just Live CBD want to hook you guys up. You can get 30% off your entire order with code RACERX at checkout. Visit justlive.com. That's JUSTLIVE, justlive.com, and use code RACERX so you get 30% off your entire order.
Welcome to the Moto Marketing Podcast, presented by RacerX, the podcast for moto industry professionals, entrepreneurs, and riders. If you want to grow your brand and business in today's digital-first world, you have to know how to turn a stranger into a fan, turn a like into a customer. You have to know how to turn attention into dollars. This podcast is dedicated to keeping you in the know on real marketing tactics that work in the moto world so that you grow your business and help grow the sport. Get ready to learn from the very same marketing experts trusted by RacerX, Lucas Oil Pro Motocross, GNCC, and NBC Sports. They'll help you navigate the world of digital marketing for your moto brand. This is the Moto Marketing Podcast. Presented by RacerX.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast. A little bit of a different background today. We're recording this late because we've got a special guest with us that it is morning in Australia and it is evening in Morgantown, West Virginia on the East Coast of the United States. Somebody that I'm excited to bring to you. I think you guys will enjoy today's episode. Somebody that is doing something really cool, built something from nothing into a very successful business. And that's who we'd like to have on the show. So we have Sam Morton from Australia, who is the founder, the guy behind, the business owner, whatever you want to call him, the guy that wears all the hats at SKDA. Sam, welcome to the show, man. I appreciate you joining us.
Cheers, man. Likewise.
What part of Australia are you coming from? I don't know that I've ever asked you that. What's the closest thing that I would recognize as far as town?
Well, I don't know. Australia's a weird place, isn't it? I live in a capital city called Adelaide, which is the capital of South Australia.
Yep.
Obviously, in Australia, everyone knows Melbourne and Sydney, which is not too far away from here. We're sort of intentionally not there. You know, I grew up in Adelaide. It's just a tiny little city with no traffic and no people and nothing happening. And that's exactly the way I like it.
That's cool. That's awesome. So one of the cool things about this podcast and what I've realized is it's become my favorite aspect of why I do this is it's how we connected. You'd reached out to me on Instagram and said, "Hey man, I enjoy the show," and just kind of left it at that. And I appreciate that. And then I kind of dug into your account and realized that you were SKDA. And I was like, man, I need to invite this guy on. And we've had several conversations, and we're finally getting you on the show. Man, I love having business owners like yourself on that have taken something literally from an idea and turned it into a very successful business. And you're growing and expanding in the United States and just all around the world. So you've told me this story, but I want our listeners to hear it as well. And if you're listening, be sure to watch on YouTube. It's kind of cool to be able to see our guests. SKDA, where did that start? Let's start there.
It was sort of an unintentional. When I look back at it, though, I think it was sort of more intentional than I even realized it was, especially recently. Like even since I spoke to you and gave you the sort of insight into how it started. Like there's a pretty quick story there that I'll rattle off in a second. But I think before that, it was sort of maybe something that was always going to happen in some form. Growing up, I rode bikes, I raced bikes, not at a serious level, like at a state level, had a good time doing it. And I was always really creative. Like I loved art in school and I loved drawing pictures and I was really, really arty. And on top of that, I always had a sort of a bit of a business and proactive mind. Like I had a chicken breeding business when I was 10. And I used to sell little chickens out of our shed, you know, like so I had a few things going on that I'd never really put together until really recently. But when it was 2009, I had a KX250F and I was racing it and it was good fun. And I saw Troy Lee Designs had a day in the dirt graphics kit that I had for the model that I had, and it looked so cool, man. Like it was seriously awesome. Such a nice design. I still remember it perfectly. And I wanted to get that kit for my bike, but there was some pretty specific changes, like design changes and even some logo changes that I wanted to make to that design. Like I didn't just want the Troy Lee one. I wanted to use some of those ideas and create something else. So I went to a couple of graphics companies, local ones, and just said, hey, can you help me do this? Ran over it with a few of them. And we went backwards and forwards a few times, and they couldn't quite get it the way that I wanted it. You know, I wanted it to be a specific way and they just couldn't work it out. So instead of just continuously banging my head against the wall with them, I actually jumped onto Microsoft Publisher myself and drew it up the way I wanted it. And then presented that design to these graphics companies and said, hey, you know, this is what I want. Can you please replicate this and print it out for me? So they did. And even when I did that, I drew a little hand-drawn logo in there just because I did it and it was mine. I thought it was cool, and put it on my bike. And that was sort of the end of it. Like I wasn't really intending to do anything else. I was just going to run it on my bike and that's it. But I had a few friends of mine see it and just sort of say, you know, man, that looks sick. Like, can you jump on Publisher and design one for me? And it just sort of snowballed from there.
So what, and if you're watching, these are the things we deal with when we're working from home with COVID. My dog's going to make an appearance. So at what age was that again? It was at high school? Like how were you pretty young?
I was 2009. So I don't know. I was around 18.
That's crazy. So you had told me when we had a conversation before about SKDA kind of, I said, what does it stand for? And you told me kind of the evolution of the name and how you eventually got to SKDA. I thought that was an interesting story, if you don't mind sharing that.
Yeah, sure. So when I started the company, as I said, I was 18, right? So I was just a kid with a cool idea and everything was just, you know, motocross and awesome. So I named the company Sickness without the C. So it was SIKNESS. So like fully sick, right? And that was the name of the brand back then, which is really cool. Obviously, it suited to the demographic that I was trying to hit, which was other kids my age. But as the company sort of progressed after not even long, after a year or so, the company progressing, I realized that name was cool, but it didn't really hit the wider demographic. Like it was something that was tasty to the 18-year-olds, but the 40-year-old with two kids didn't think things were fully sick, therefore wasn't into the brand. So the brand, the logo was already an S and a K for the name Sickness. So some people were already referring to it as SK instead of Sickness, just accidentally. So when I wanted to change the brand name, SK was already there. I just said SK Designs because that's what we were doing, designing things. And I put Australia on the end of it, so that at the start, when it was only a local company dealing with a few mates at a few tracks, you put Australia on the end of your name and you sound really big and cool, right? You sound like a national company. So I was like, all right, cool. SK Designs Australia, that's our name. And we ran with that. And then in 2018, we opened up the American business. So I flew over to New York and set up an office there and got all that organized. And that company was named SK Designs America. So of course, the abbreviation for both is SKDA. We made a new SKDA logo that was received really well. It sort of stuck and we just sort of ran with it and have stayed with it since.
So, I mean, I'm sure there are guys and girls out there that are listening to this that are a lot like you and I were at a young age. We're just fans of the sport. We want to work in the sport. It's our dream to, either own your own business or do something in the world of moto and two wheels. And you literally created this thing from nothing to now it's a worldwide business. Can you take me through? I think we kind of glossed over, obviously, the conception of this business to now we're talking about it being SKDA, the American division as well. How does one go from having this idea of this design and this graphics oriented business to now it's worldwide? You have relationships with people like the guys at FMF and before we hit record, you're talking about expanding into some more American race series. How does it go from that idea to you're flying to New York? Like what are some of the things that went on in between that time frame?
Oh man, like that's just I don't even know. Like it's been insane. Seriously, it's been an absolutely insane journey. Literally, when you were asking me that, I got a shiver down my spine, like 100%. Like it's out of control.
It happens so fast that sometimes you don't realize like what you've built, and like you don't slow down enough to take a look back and be like, damn, I've made something pretty cool. I kind of think that might be what's going on right now.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. It's so cool. I can't be thankful enough for the situation I'm in and the opportunities I've had. Like it's just out of control. I think that when I first decided to do it, so it was sort of, 2018 or whatever I said it was. No, it wasn't 2009, sorry. 2010, we officially started the company. I did as a hobby. When I did it then, for the first sort of 6 months, it was just a game and just a bit of fun on the side. And it sort of didn't take too much longer after that. Then we were still doing no sales, average sales back then, I think was like $22 a day. Like it was nothing, right? But it sort of hit a point where I realized, you know what, I can do something with this. Like this could be something cool. Like we got a bit of traction. I had a few people that thought what we was doing was pretty sweet. And somewhere around that point, I just sort of dug in. I just thought, all right, this is it. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I didn't have a journey yet. I didn't have a career path. I was like, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to let fucking anything stop me. Like this is the thing. So I just dug in like so deep. Literally nothing was going to stop me getting to where I wanted to get. Back then, obviously, One Industries was still around. 2010 was when they sold, I think. So that was when they were like at their peak, and they were the biggest and coolest and best graphics company that ever existed, right? Especially that's how it sort of came across from us over here. Like they were just the coolest. So I sort of looked up to them and thought, that's what I want to do. Like I want to become the biggest and the best. That's it. And therefore, ever since, I've just not rested at anything. And I'm still aiming towards that goal. So I think that everything that's happened, there's been heaps of little cool opportunities along the way that I've grabbed hold of, and I've met some awesome people and had wicked connections and stuff. But it's just been like never, ever accepting that I won't reach that pinnacle. And if I think if you have that, like if you have that like aim and drive of like nothing's going to stop you to get to number one, then it usually sort of pans out okay, because things that would deter some people, like someone would be like, nah, not going to happen. I'll hit a road bump, it's too hard, I'll quit now, or we're in a good spot, let's just rest. Anything like that happens, I just find a way around it and keep pushing, because I will not accept not getting to that ultimate goal.
That's awesome. I think that's something that especially I get a lot of people that reach out to me and ask how to get into the industry, and whether they're out of college or in college. I think that, Sam, what you're talking about is probably the biggest thing that people can learn from and replicate. It's the same intensity 100%. That an athlete attacks, a high level professional athlete attacks their sport in that same manner. I'm
Yep.
not going to stop until I find success. And I think the most successful of businesses and business owners have that attribute. And I mean, you and I are having some business related conversations, and you shared some numbers with us as far as like your growth. And I don't want you to share those on here unless of course you want to, but man, just seeing like it, you showed me year by year, just the steady growth. And that doesn't come from somebody that's complacent or has talent, but doesn't have the drive. Something that I'm curious, and you might've shared this with me, but I think sharing it with our listeners will be interesting. Talk to me about the team behind you at SKDA, because I think you guys are still relatively, as far as infrastructure, pretty small, and you've grown so rapidly, and you've had such success over the last handful of years. What does that team look like? Is it you pulling all the levers and doing the design? What does that look like?
Yeah, sure. I think that like in the last 24 months, I've put a lot of effort into restructuring this place to be, one, as efficient as possible, which I've always sort of focused on, but two, getting me back to doing what I should be doing in this company. Obviously, when you're a young business owner, well, any business owner, when you're a new business owner, you work 100 hours a week, right? Everyone does. It's just the game. If you want to do it and you want to win, you got to put in the hours. And I did that for so long. Like there was years I would literally work from 3 a.m. till 10 p.m., 7 days a week.
I hear you. Yeah.
And I did that for years. And my wife hates me for it. But I did it and it was part of the journey. But a couple of years ago, someone was talking to someone, because I was in that point where I was, doing everything, literally, designing, customer service, returns, printing, packing, posting, everything. And I had a few people helping me, but I was still had my hands in all the pots. But I realized, I spoke to someone about it, and they were chatting and they said, if you got fired from your company, let's say, or not even, let's just say you weren't working for your company and you applied for a job, like a position in your company, what would you be doing? Like, where is your skill set? What would you be doing for your own company? And I sort of had a bit of think, and I love designing. In the product designer here, I design all the cool, unique graphics kits and work with FMF and those guys to create their cool bikes. And that's what I want to do. And that's what I think I'm really good at. So I thought that's what I'd be doing. Therefore, if in an ideal world, that's all I'd be doing for my company. Right. So at that stage, as I said, around 24 months ago, I was like, okay, cool. That's what I need to do. I need to get back to the point that, one, I'm not working 100 hours because I need to live and talk to my wife. But at the same time, I need to get back to just doing designing. So that's when I put a lot of effort into creating this killer team. Now we've got a design department, which has some really talented people in it. And they work with the customers to do their customer requests, and they work in the customer service side and just dealing with the customers directly. And then we've got a production side where obviously everything gets manufactured and packed and shipped and sent out every day. And then we've got a marketing team as well. So we have a full-time brand manager here. She's amazing. We've got some other people that help us with our marketing in-house, that help us with a lot of our organic stuff and pay attention to some of the SEO and help monitor some of the advertising that we do, etc. And then I sort of sit in the middle, almost removed, like day-to-day operations. I'm not required anymore, which was intentional, because what that allows me to do is, if I'm quiet, if I've got a calm week and don't have heaps on, then I can go and help out whoever needs help. Literally, I'll literally go and spend a day just doing the post run with the guys down there. They love it. They get to hang out with me and have a good time and have a good vibe. And I don't mind it either. Like, it's getting back to the roots and enjoying it all. But then when I've got a big week where I'm dealing with, people like you or some of the other companies that we work with, or big race teams, I can come in my office, shut my door, lock it. No one bugs me. I'm here to deal with them directly and do the designing and whatever. So this team I've built around me are all amazing. They're wicked people. They all have their own specialties from different areas. And they allow me to come back in here and work on pushing this company forward. And I use some of them to help me do that, and some of them I use to allow me to do that.
That's interesting. And I think it's funny, we're 70 some episodes into this show, and that isn't a topic I've really dove into with any of our guests before. And I think any successful company the person behind that company has hit that point to where they realize I can't do everything. If I want to be a business owner and literally not a slave of my business, I've got to build a team around me. And I have a business partner that we had the same thing. I mean, we started as a video production company and a web design company several years ago. And that transitioned into a digital agency that we are today. But at one point I was selling, I was running campaigns. My business partner was doing payroll and website design and like we were doing everything. We didn't find freedom until we started to bring on talented team members, but then trust them. And somebody said to me once, and it wasn't their quote, but the first time I'd heard it was, you're not going to be successful until you start working on your business and not in your business. So it's cool to hear somebody else kind of tell that story, because I'm sitting here smiling. I'm like, man, we didn't start really making money and being successful until we stopped trying to have our hand on every single thing.
Of course.
And much like you, I could be completely invisible from my business for a certain period of time and it would still operate. And I think that's pretty unique that, any successful business owner kind of shares that same commonality. I want to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to dive into some of the unique and fun things that SKDA has going on. We'll be right back. So stick around.
Fly Racing's 2021 line has been improved and expanded, offering the industry's widest range of moto and off-road products. Led by the revolutionary Formula helmet featuring Rheon technology, Fly Racing has taken big steps forward with the all-new Light Pant and Zone Pro goggle. It's going to debut this year at the Monster Energy Supercross by Justin Brayton and the Muck-Off Honda team. The Zone Pro goggle delivers premium performance from a brand you know and trust, fearless pursuit, Fly Racing. It's personally the gear that I wear. I've worn it moto, BMX, mountain bike. I've worn it and repped it for years. In my opinion, it's the best. Be sure to check out their goggle, their helmet, and all their gear. Fly Racing. Hey, big shout out to our friends at FMF. Little D and the guys are always doing some pretty exciting things, not just with the performance products, but man, they've got the coolest apparel in the game, and I want to give you guys an opportunity to get that at a little bit of a discount. If you go to FMF and pick up any gear you'd like, hats, shirts, whatever it is, upon checkout, if you enter the code MMP30, MMP30, you can get 30% off. So MMP30 at checkout and get 30% off your order on FMF apparel.
All right, guys, welcome back. We have Sam Morton with SKDA. Sam, I want to talk about a couple things. Some of the teams that you're working with, and then just the style. And we'll start with that. The look, the feel. I think every industry has this. My industry is a commodity, and we don't own Facebook. We use the same tools that everybody else has. It's just we do things a little bit differently, a little bit unique. That's why you would work with us over somebody else. Your space is very similar. It is literally an adhesive that you stick to a motorcycle. Yeah. There's a lot of companies that can do it, and even those that aren't in moto.
Yeah.
You and a couple of others, I've started to notice there's something different. It looks and feels different. And I think a lot of it is we've been so used to our bikes looking the same for so many years. And it's been small, maybe updates and iterations and adjustments, but I don't know. I look to some of the past Supercross racers or free riders that have taken to YouTube, and they're doing their own thing, and their number doesn't have to be this big, approved size on the front. They can get creative with it. Now they're putting it in the corner. And once that started to happen, I've started to see some people kind of rising to the top, and their stuff just looks different. Your guys' stuff just looks different. Sometimes the colors are a matte rather than a gloss. And obviously you have your Supercross and Motocross athletes, and theirs has to look a certain way. But where does that style come from? I don't know if I'm making sense, but there's just something about SKDA that you guys look different. Can you talk to me about that? Was that kind of your inspiration, or where did that come from?
100%. 100%. That's completely intentional. You've hit the nail on the head. We did that intentionally, and we continue to do so. It was a couple of years ago. I think it was 2017, something around there. might have been a bit earlier actually, 2016. We noticed the same thing that you noticed, right? Especially then, like as you're saying now, it's changing a bit, which we think we've played a part in. But back then, especially, like it was the same. If graphics kits from any real company looked the same, they look good, like they look cool. They make bikes look factory and pro and awesome, but they were all very similar. We've, as you've said, you know, we've seen our numbers, right? We've been growing for a long time, very solidly, which is great. But we got to a point where we realized if we want to get this company to be the biggest and best, number one, and all that sort of stuff, and work with the coolest athletes and the best brands, etc., we've got to do something that's different from what everyone else is doing. So we realized that our demographic, like who we're selling to, is not majority racers. You know, racers make up 10% of the sport, right? It's the fans, it's the people that just go and buy a bike, want to ride in the dunes. Like they're the people we're selling to. Therefore, they actually don't need to have regulation numbers. They don't need to have specific colors and specific logos and all that sort of stuff. Like we were catering for them. I think the whole industry was. Everyone was catering for the racer, but sort of missing the fact that that's not who we're selling to. And although a lot of those hobby riders want to look like the pros, maybe that's just because they hadn't been offered a quality variation. So we put a bit of effort into changing that, right? You know, throw out what you know about designs, throw out what you know about a race bike. If you have a bike and it's literally just a canvas and you want to make it look as cool as you can by using, you know, premium design techniques, etc., and then at the same time pairing that with being very clean, like we really focus on being really clean with our design work. So we wanted to do something completely different, make it really clean, but still have, you know, a few random things that'd be recognizable to people so they weren't completely scared off, right? I didn't want to just start putting little dogs on the side of the kit or something because people go, what the hell? Right. But, you know, so we kept our race number, we just moved it, we changed the color of it. We kept the main tank shroud element. We just moved it and changed the color of it and moved it around or whatever. And started to try and create these designs that would be really clean or really recognizable from the other side of the track, not just up in your face, and that were completely different, like something people hadn't seen. And initially it was just a test. There was a kit that we did, it's called the Divide series, that's what we name it. And that was like the pinnacle. When we started, that was the first kit that was like, let's do something weird. We did that. And man, it went off. Like even now we still sell it like crazy. It's really, really clean, really simple. No one had done anything like it before. And it just broke the net, man. Like it went crazy. We were working with Brayton at the time when he was down in Australia, and I showed him when I first did the concept, and he was like, dude, this is nuts, man. Like you're gonna kill people, man. Like this is crazy. And it just went nuts. And then we realized how effective that was and have since just focused on doing that, you know, do it different. Don't design what someone else has designed. Come up with something new and constantly push that. And I think that's one of the main factors for our company becoming bigger and recognized is that we're doing something intentionally that no one else is doing.
One of the things that it was after you and I had met and had a conversation, I hit your website and I saw the slider on your site, which everybody should go to SKDA's website and scroll around and just see for yourself. It's the stuff's incredible. But one of the graphics on your website shows some of the teams that you're working with, and Club MX Yamaha is on there, and the one that caught my attention was Muck Off, just because I'm like, okay, then a light bulb went off. Okay, cool. They you know, that makes sense. They have Australian roots. Now they've moved to the US. Can you talk to me about, that's an aspect of this industry that I still find interesting, because I don't deal in that side of things. I have a couple of teams that we help from an advice standpoint, but I still am kind of a fan from that perspective. Like when it comes to people like, you know, the guys at 7 or FMF, like I know those guys very well now, but when it comes to a team, there's still that like shininess factor to me to where when I see that you're working with, you know, Muck Off Honda, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Can you talk to us a little bit about how does something like that start? Were you just neighbors with the gentleman that owns that team, or like, how do you make that connection? Obviously it might be a little bit easier for you being Australian as well. What does that look like, and kind of how does that grow from there?
Race teams is a tricky thing. It's connections more than anything. And then it's proving your capabilities, I think. We're working really hard now to start working with some of the really big teams all around the globe, not just in Australia and not just in the US, everywhere. And it really comes down to those two things. It's who you know, for starters. You can't get in the door if you don't know who they are, right? So you can, who you know, and then on top of that, they need to be confident in your capabilities. A lot of the time with these race team deals, sometimes they're paid deals. Like sometimes we pay the teams, but a lot of the time it's not. A lot of the time it's just product supply. Therefore, I mean, anyone could go and buy a printer tomorrow and start a graphics company and say, yeah, Honda will print and send you all your kits, and then that's easy. Right. So why would a team choose a specific company, right? I think it comes down to its capability. They need to be confident that when they call you up at, Thursday night at 9 p.m. and say, hey man, I need 65 kits delivered by 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, they need to know that you can get it done. That's an extreme example. We have dealt with that before, which is why I brought it up, but that's an extreme example. But it's like, you need to have the brand, you need to have the setup and the staff and everything to be able to deal with whatever requests these teams throw at you. And they throw some heavy stuff. They're not just asking for a kit for their rider for the weekend. They seriously want, they want 100 kits in stock. And when they get down to 60, they want us to send them another 100, which makes it a little bit tricky when you're trying to start out. We reached out, Markov Honda specifically, the team owner, Yuriv Konsky, who was over there. A lot of people have sort of come across him. I reached out to him back when I was pretty small still. I'd bumped into him a few times just in the industry over here in Australia. But he didn't know who I was. He was a team owner and I was just some stupid kid, right? So I reached out to him and just said, hey man, I think you're sick. I'd love to work with you one day. I'm making graphics and it's pretty cool. And that was it. And, for no harm to him at all, he didn't really get back to me at the start, which is fair enough. I mean, imagine how many requests these team owners get. Sure. But I think I sort of planted a seed. And then as my company started to get a bit of traction and get a bit of limelight here in Australia, he came back at one point and sort of said, hey man, what you're doing is pretty sweet. This was literally a couple of years later. He's like, it's pretty sweet. I'd love to have a chat to you. We chatted and we got started. Originally, I was just designing his bikes for him and he was still working with another company. And then he sort of put his faith in us and gave us a bit of a crack, and I worked my butt off until I kept his team satisfied. And we've been working with him ever since, which has been, I think it's 7 years or something now with working with him, which is a long time in race team world. Like sponsors, don't always stick around for that long. And the same sort of thing happens with these other teams. It's a bit easier for me now because our brand's got a fair bit of weight. Even as you mentioned earlier, right? Like I messaged you on Instagram, you didn't know who I was, had a look at my page, saw that I ran SK and thought, hey, that's cool. And that prompted you to want to kick off and have a conversation. And that's the same thing that happens with these teams. Like we've reached out to some US teams recently, even the Club MX thing. We hit them up, hey guys, I'd love to work with you. They obviously looked up who I was and realized, oh, he's the guy that runs that company. And then already we had the credibility. I didn't have to wait 2 years like I did originally. They knew who we were. They knew we were doing some cool stuff and they were in. And I think that's sort of how it all works. You have to have the brand behind you to back you up. And then you've just got to put a bunch of effort into creating these relationships and maintaining them.
So I know there's at least one person out there that's listening that's like, why would somebody like Sam or any graphics company do this? Because you guys have to work really hard for these teams and you're either paying them or giving them product. What's you're a business guy and in my world, all that matters is ROI, right? So
sure.
What, for somebody that might not understand it, what's the benefit of that? Like they're not necessarily buying the product off you. You're working 10x harder. Is it the relationship in the industry? Is it the exposure? Because not everybody knows that you make their graphics unless they really dig in. What's the benefit of a relationship like that?
I'm glad you asked that question because I think that's one of the cool things about us and about our company. I'm a fan, man. I'm like you, right? I love this sport.
Yeah.
When I was a kid growing up and I started this silly little company, I started doing something with it. My dream and goal is and always has been, I want to create the coolest and best company, but I want to work with the coolest and best riders and companies. That's what I want to do, right? If I can create a platform and build it up to give me the ability to work with Chad Reed or Ken Roxon or Eli Tomac or FMF or Fox, then that's literally my dream come true. Like I've done that. We've worked with Fox and FMF recently, and I'm like nearly crying, man, when we're doing this stuff. Like it's just the best thing in the world. And the race teams thing is the same. So our relationship with a race team or our relationship with FMF, like a lot of the FMF is a bit different. They do some awesome stuff for us. So let's stick to the race teams. With the race teams, it's a one-way street, right? Like there's some benefits. There is some benefits. Like you said, there's a bit of brand credibility. So if people see our brand on factory Honda or whatever, then they're like, okay, cool. They must know what they're doing. So that helps. The relationships thing is really big. You can't, as I said before, getting in with new race teams or working with new companies, it's all about who you know. So keeping those team owners satisfied and the riders satisfied and being in their pockets and helping them out is beneficial.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't really care about that, and I don't try and calculate it. Like it does help, I'm sure it does. I know it does in different ways, but I'm just in it for the fan side, man. Like I just want to be involved. I want to have our graphics kit on a race team that wins a race, and I want to be able to walk into the pits, walk up to Cowie factory team truck and just be like, hey man, the riders invite me in, I go sit down and have a drink with them after their race. Like that for me is the coolest thing in the world, as any fan would, right? Like if you could go to next round and go and sit down with Tomac and have a chat in his truck, like people would die for that. And what I've done somewhat intentionally is created a platform that's given me it's given me the ability to be able to walk into the truck and sit down and talk to these guys, and they want to have a conversation. And I think that for me, that's why I work with teams. That's why I work with FMF. That's why I work with Fox. That's why I work with these people, because I just want to be involved with the industry and hang out with these guys and hear about how they got stuck on that rut on the corner and, have a really cool conversation with these people that are the icons of our sport. And this business has given me the platform to do that.
I think the guys that are in this industry that are either in a decision maker role or own the business. If you find true hardcore fans, I think that story, you'll hear that over and over again, where not every decision that we make as business owners, but also super fans of the sport, are the most lucrative decisions. And you telling that story, it makes me think of this very podcast. Like, man, we've invested thousands of dollars. We have a producer, we completely renovated 1,000 square feet of our office and turned it into a studio. Like we've put tons of money and tons of time into this show, and I've made $0. RacerX doesn't pay me. If they sell ads, I don't keep a dime of it. I have a very unique relationship with RacerX. I looked at doing this show as an opportunity. I mean, who's going to say no to having a show on RacerX? But I don't make any money on it. But what it has led to is opportunities like this. You and I now have a relationship because of this show. So you kind of doing your deal with the teams, that it makes me think of this show. And so I think there's a lot of that going on in this industry, to where if you're a core fan of the sport, but you also own a business, not every decision is necessarily dollar motivated. A lot of times it's that 16-year-old version of you that would have killed to be in that spot and have that conversation with a Donnie Emler Jr. or somebody like that. Or a couple weeks ago, I had Troy Lee on. Still to this day, when I say that, I'm like, I actually taught, and Troy Lee doesn't go on podcasts. So like that alone, just those kind of experiences. And I think you have those now. Like you're a fan from Australia, and now you have US ties, and you're talking to some really cool teams in some other two-wheeled series in the US. Like it's obviously about money, but it's not always about the dollar.
Correct.
So I think that's kind of the motive behind that, working with those teams, because you're putting in a ton of time. When you said you've got to do 60 some orders by tomorrow, like there's something more than the dollar behind it, because you're not making $1 off of that. Right. So it's pretty unique.
100%. I think that's it. And that's one of our biggest motivators. I'm literally not here to make money. That's not what this business is about. It's never been about that. One of the cool things of being the only owner, there's no investors and no one else has any in on this, is the fact that I don't have to listen to someone who's trying to make a profit. I can literally disregard profit 90% of the time. You need it to run the business and move forward, but that's it. I am here to do the coolest shit and work with the coolest teams and call up JB and have a conversation, you know, like that's why I'm doing this and that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
And I think that's rad.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. We're coming to the end of it. And I told you before we hit record, I'd like to try to do a part 2. And man, I think you and I could just have the business of moto related conversations, because we're very much on the same page. And for those who don't know, Sam, how old are you?
I'm 29. I turned 30 later this year.
Yeah. So Sam has a very, very successful business, and I'm 32. So he's a couple years younger than me. Like, it's what he's done is pretty incredible. And I'm a huge moto fan, but I'm also a business fan. So having these conversations, like everything you're saying, I'm like, damn it, man, I resonate with that completely. Like, I love talking business. So I'd love to have you back on. I hope that one day I get an opportunity to meet you, whether it's in the States or I'm not a huge fan of like, I want to go to France. I want to go to Italy. One place I've always said I want to go, and I tell my wife this all the time, I want to go to Australia. So I hope I get the opportunity to do that. It'd be awesome to meet you in person, whether it's over there or over here. And yeah, hopefully we'll do something together, and you guys will see more of Sam, and whether it's on here or hell, maybe one day we'll get him in the studio. That'd be pretty sweet. So before we end, I'd like for you to tell folks where they can go if somebody wants to wants to make their bike look unique, wants to try something a little bit different. skda.com.au, or I want to make sure I don't botch that on the show. What's the URL?
Yeah, sure. It's .com.au, as you said, skda.com.au. Okay. But I mean, no one even does that right nowadays, right? Everyone just Googles it anyway. If you Google right. SKDA, you can't miss this. So just do that, and it keeps it easier for everybody.
Yeah, it's sick. And when I saw, I'd heard SKDA, he was, starting to hear rumblings on whether it was on another podcast or whatever. I knew the brand, and when I saw that it was Sam in my Instagram DM, I was like, I gotta talk to this guy. And here we are. So, man, it's early over there. We've had a few meetings with Sam to where he's woken up at like 4 a.m. his time to meet with us. So it's a little bit later, but it's still early over there, man. I appreciate you taking time out of your morning to jump on with us, and looking forward to having you on again here soon.
Sounds rad, man. I'm sure about to get in there sometime. Pre-COVID, I was in the States all the time for work, and awesome. I will be once the world opens back up. So we'll definitely be able to catch up in person as well.
I'm looking forward to it. Awesome, man. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Moto Marketing Podcast. If your goal is to get real, measurable results from your marketing that will grow your company revenue, then check out how Impact Media can get the same results that they have for Moto's most iconic brands by visiting thinkimpact.com. That's THINKIMPAKT.com. Have a marketing question that you want answered on the show? Send your questions to questions@motomarketingpodcast.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast.